It's time for today's episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast, recorded in front of a slightly tipsy studio audience at world-famous Champy's Fried Chicken. We will have the latest on Georgia Bulldogs football, basketball, and recruiting. Watch live and send us your questions on the 11 Alive Sports page on Facebook. Be advised this podcast is off the record and not safe for work. Also, be sure to subscribe to the UGA Sports Live Podcast on iTunes and Google Play.
Everybody, welcome to the UGA Sports Live Podcast here at Champy's on Baxter Street. My name is Rodney DeBolsey. I'm joined by Jake Roos and Jim Donna, the former head coach at the University of Georgia and the star of the show, if you will. So we got Coach Donna and Jake Roos and myself. We're going to be talking to you about Georgia football the next hour. Georgia just had a very good outing against Middle Tennessee, and we will break down what we saw and what we expect to see coming up against their Missouri and Drew Lock. So we'll have
the first of 3 Tiger battles this year.
Yeah. So we'll talk about all those coming up. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Athens Ford, our big sponsor. They're here in the west side of town. So if you come in on Atlanta Highway, you can swing by Athens Ford. They got great deals. We'll tell you about them later in the show. Big shout out to Aaron Overhead Doors, sponsor of not only our podcast but of UGAsports.com. That's where we work. We work at UGA Sports. Your Pie, if you get a chance and you were in town like last week and, you know, all of a sudden the game goes from 7 o'clock to noon and you're looking for something after the game, of course, you can always swing by Champy's, but you can also swing by Your Pie. There's also 58 locations, so if you're not in Athens, there's got to be a location near you somewhere. And, of course, we're going to knock back a couple beers during the show.
Courtesy of Academia.
Yeah, I think it's the Academia Brewing Company. What do you got?
I'm the IQ IPA, as always. You know I'm a hophead. So.
Yeah, I know.
It's a rhetorical question every week. You ask him, you got the same thing.
Well, I don't know, because they switch them out here sometimes. I got the honey blonde, so.
Well, you always got the honey blonde.
I do like it. But we've had quite a few different ones. And, of course, Cable East, big fans of Robert Wall out in Statham. Thank you for being a sponsor of the show. And if you get a chance, swing by 365 Game Day. They're not exactly the first place that Rivals tells you to go, because if you need your gear, but the first place we tell you to go if you need your stuff. So don't tell Rivals that we're sending you to 365 Game Day. All right, Coach, give me your overall impressions on the Georgia-Middle Tennessee State game.
I felt like it was a very workmanlike performance from the standpoint of a lot of good plays made, a lot of good energy, and you got to play several guys in different positions that were really building up the depth. Certainly the defense made the plays necessary. Everybody worries about the pass rush, but it's hard to rush a guy that averages less than 2 seconds every time he throws the ball. I mean, it was pretty quickly for everybody to ascertain that they were going to try to get rid of the ball fast. And, you know, they ran for a little bit. You just can't stonewall everybody and stop them to nothing. But, I mean, I think overall our defense is playing good as a unit. It's going to get better. We're getting better. Young guys getting a chance to play too. Offensively, did about anything we wanted, and you know, still remains to be seen what's going to be the situation with Swift. I mean, he's certainly a tremendous player, but I thought Holyfield stepped up and did a good job. Kicking game continues to be outstanding. I was worried a little bit about our inability to field some punts. They got 43 yards and just bad yardage there by not making a good decision to fair catch a couple punts, and that put us back on the other end of the field, which against a really good team will haunt you sometimes. And it could have helped Middle too, because we had a fumble in the end zone. But I would say just quick synopsis, which I tried to make, I thought that was one of those games that could have been, you know, mess around and all that, but we didn't. We had a couple penalties on kickoffs. Those are going to happen sometime when you got different guys covering, and then we had a couple holding penalties. But overall, I think our team continues to improve, practice hard against each other, and, you know, you got a chance to really build some momentum here the next 3 weeks, getting ready for, you know, big game against LSU, although this game we'll talk about is a big game. But overall, I think our team's really made some good progress from the first of the year to this point.
Any concerns coming off of that Middle Tennessee State game? You mentioned the pass rush that a lot of people have brought up, but as you said, you know, hard to kind of get that going against a guy who goes as quickly, lets it go as quickly as Stockstill did. Any concerns, anything that cropped up last week that maybe you haven't seen from the Bulldogs to this point that you said, well, they might have to figure that out going into next week?
You know, I think overall the ability to stop the run is going to be a prominent situation until our linebackers get a little bit more comfortable. I mean, you lose a guy like Roquan. You saw him last night, dominating type guy there. And also Floyd looked good too. But I think stopping the run is going to be a little bit more difficult maybe than it was last year. But as we mentioned on a couple of these early podcasts, I think collectively our defense is going to blend in there together, and we can put some packages together if a team is a run-first team, which not many teams in this league are, to stop the run. I really like the way we play the ball in the air. We're around the guys. We got a lot of good underneath coverage. We tackle good in space. And as compared to the first couple years here, or the first year and a half, there were a lot of passes that we weren't contesting, that we now contest with our athleticism. So I'm not near as concerned about the pass rush as maybe some of the fans are, although that, you like to see vertical pressure, hands in the face and all that. But let's get real. I mean, we didn't really cut it loose against Austin Peay or Middle Tennessee as far as packages that we have. We got some packages in the closet or in the boxes there that we can bring out and going to really give us some heat if we need it.
So will we see those against Drew Lock this weekend?
Yeah, I think we'll see some of it, but I think you got to be careful about trying to, pressure him and then end up with some guy on an island that can't cover a guy. Obviously our corners can, but all of a sudden they go empty formation and put 5 receivers in, and you got maybe a safety covering a wide receiver. You got to be careful about that. So we'll pick and choose that, but I think the biggest thing with Locke is affect him a little bit. He's a very good athlete. He's got a good arm, but we've got to hit him some, not necessarily sack him, but we got to pound him and make him understand that, hey, you're just not going to be able to get back there and just look all day. So I think that'll be something. I
think that's why people are so concerned about the pressure. It's like, okay, you see the guy, we saw it at Austin Peay, we saw it at Middle Tennessee State, and even at South Carolina, take the snap, turn his shoulders, fire it away immediately. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get the guy. I mean, like you said, we have the times of these guys coming off the corners, 1.06 seconds, but again, that's off the corner, and you still got to get to him. The ball's already out of his hands, and people are starting to worry about that, but I guess the concern was, where's the Ledbetter pressure? Where's the, Tyler Clark pressure? Where, like you said, the vertical pressure up the middle. But Kirby says, look, we're taking away the run first. That's not on them. And then he says, and look at the scoreboard and look at the yards per play. And I get what he's saying because,
right.
Georgia fans and fans in general, we tend to worry about, where's your Achilles heel? But
when you're second,
when I see Locke, that's when I'm like, that kid has ripped Georgia to shreds. He's ripped everybody to shreds. But that guy, if you give him time, that's you get the hands a little nervous there.
7 touchdown passes against us in the last 2 games.
Really?
I mean, he had 4 last year, I think, and 3 the year before. So he's got the ability to hum it, and he's a very good athlete too. I don't know if a lot of our fans realize he had a chance to play D1 basketball too. So it shows you kind of footwork he's got. That's why you listen to the show. You learn stuff.
I didn't know this stuff.
So he's a very adept at moving around in the pocket, and he's pretty good on the zone read. He can keep the ball if you need to it. But I think from our standpoint, there's a little give and take there. I do feel like that going into the season, if you look at our situation, we lost a lot more people on the back end than we did the front end. So consequently, we were worried about run support angles, worried about coverage, guys fitting in the nickel and dime. Then you lose, Tyreek McGee, we lose him during the preseason. So we've always been moving around trying to get our nickel and dime stuff ready for a game like this. I think you'll see a lot better packages as far as set up to stop the pass in this game than maybe the run like the other game. So I just feel good about James Brown, man. I feel good about our defense. And the offense, the thing that worries me a little bit is passing when the other team knows we got to pass because our protection's not set up for that. We're RPOs, throw the ball on first and second down if we got 8 men in the box and all that. But, we're not a very good protecting team under pressure with the pressure on us because that's not what we work on. That's not our MO, but we're getting better at it, and we're working.
How do you fix that? So when the team knows you're in 3rd and 8, they know you got to throw it, and Georgia's pass protection isn't stellar. I mean, it's been good. It's been sporadic. Sometimes it's been great. Sometimes it's not been. We saw one really good play to Jeremiah Holloman when he had Jake Fromm had all day to throw it, and they combined for 65-something yards pass downfield. Other times he's been sacked a few times, and against teams that you're not expecting those sacks to come in. What do you, when you say that's not your MO, but you know it's an issue in practice? What do you?
Well, they definitely work on third down in practice with the defense rushing and with us protecting. And the reason I say that, I'm not being critical.
No,
I'll be critical when I need to, but I think that we just got to understand that we're set up to be a zone team, come off the ball, throw play action passes and all that. We're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time working on 2 or 3 different protections to protect the quarterback, because we're not going to be on third down a lot. We'll be in it some if we get some penalties, but we're not a lost yardage play team much. Yeah. So you practice what you do best, and you also work on your weaknesses. We're getting better at it. We weren't very good at it last year either. I mean, there's a lot of teams conversely that are good at protecting the passer but can't run the ball an inch.
Yeah.
So that's just the issue that you have with our style. I mean, if you have a tackle and a guard that are practicing kicking back and pass proing all day like these teams that throw it every down, they're going to be good at it. But I think we're good enough at it. We're just not – I'd say we're a B to B minus pass protecting team, whereas we're A everything else. So it's not like we're a D or D minus. We can protect, and the other thing we can do, we can run the draw, and then we can let Thunderfoot punt it. So so there's nothing wrong with that with our defense. So I mean, you put all the thing that's encouraging for me going on this plane, the 70 guys that we're taking, you can look around at each other and be very comforting to know that our defense has got their skin in the game, our offense has got their skin in the game, and our defense has got double skin. Yeah. I mean, and our kicking game got really difference maker kicking game. We got a difference making kicking game, covering kicks, returning kicks, kicking the ball, making field goals, doing all the things. We say this every 3 or 4 weeks. 1 out of every 6 plays is a kick. And we've got a decided advantage in this game watching them against Purdue. Now, maybe they did better than other games, but they had some kicks returned on them. They didn't do a very good job on some of their stuff too. So I like our kicking game to be an edge if we're maybe a little bit backward in some areas, but our kicking game is going to make a quantum leap over some teams just because of what we can do there.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, you're talking about kind of how things stack up. And the one matchup that I'm really interested in watching this week is Tyson Campbell and how he kind of gets broken in against Drew Lock. Because this is the best quarterback he's going to face probably, I think, all year. I think Lock's, as good as anybody he's going to go up against.
Well, we're going to go against Stidham. I think that's going to be – Stidham doesn't throw the ball as much, but
right.
He's got the advantage of the running game, play action. But I will say this about Tyson. He really has answered the challenge. We played a couple years ago out there, and they really attacked. I don't know if it's Parrish or who it was, but in the first half, they had like over 250 yards passing. I don't know who the other corner was, but now because you got Baker on the other side, it's hard to throw on him. So Tyson's going to see more looks, but I thought Coach Tucker did a good job the other day of mixing it up on the press coverage and backing up and using underneath stuff. It wasn't a situation where it looked like, well, they really hurt Campbell. Let me just tell you that this guy is a sleeping giant corner just because he can run like a scalded dog. I mean, he's got great hands. He's got good intellect. He works at it. He's intelligent. And he's everything you want in a corner, just like Baker. I mean, I would say at this point, he's playing a lot more and getting a lot more practice time than Baker did as a freshman.
No doubt about that.
And
let me interrupt you
part
right
of it's because of need, but I don't think he's going to be a negative in any form or fashion. I think he's going to be a plus.
No, to your point, the question about that, I remember that Ole Miss game where Jawan Briscoe was in.
Yeah.
And Jawan was getting picked on, and when he couldn't do it, they dropped in DeAndre Baker, and
that was it.
That was it. I mean, it was the guy never came out. And I always wanted to know this: how did Baker just seem so much better when he got in? He had to have been showing that in practice, or not. I mean, In other words, how did Briscoe beat him out?
I'm just going to take up for Kirby and Mel.
I'm not questioning. It seems odd.
It's a good question.
It just seems such a difference. And I'm not banging on Juwan Briscoe, nice kid.
Nah, but here's what happens, though. When you take over a program and you got established guys and you got other guys, you really don't have a feel for how they're going to play in the game. I know my first year, the first couple games, there were guys that I thought in spring practice were really going to be good that didn't turn out to be as good. And, of course, I didn't do a good enough job coaching either. But I think the biggest thing is just – you got to get a feel for your players and how they're going to react and how they react in game situations and how they react with the other 10 out there. Some guys look good one-on-one, but, when they get or are playing a team defense, they don't do as well. So you made a good point there. How was he not playing? But at the same time, I can see how you maybe missed out on that. And I did the same thing when I was at Marshall. We started some guys the first year that after spring practice and fall camp, we were going on what they had done in the past more on what we evaluated, And I know when we left there, we had a guy that we didn't think was very good, and the new coach came in and made him a center, and he got drafted in the third round. So,
this is always curious to me because that Kirby is so big on the competition in practice, and that determines it.
Sure.
And yeah, and I mean, even from any coach will tell you can have a kid do it right 10 times, 15 times in practice, gets in a game and loses his mind, And but it seemed like such a vast difference to me between Briscoe and Baker that I'm like, was he really better in practice than Baker? It just seemed odd to me. That's what I've always wanted to ask a coach from that standpoint.
But I think the one thing that I would say to the fans, and that's what's good about having these shows and these different, all these different ways of having concerns and talking among yourselves and having chats and all these different people that go online and all, you have a tendency to evaluate and really scrutinize things, which is okay. But if anybody would have told you last year at this time that Georgia would have played for the national championship last year and be ranked number 2 in the nation this year, you would have probably been very happy to get it. So we've got some warts, but we lost some really good players, and we've looked pretty good considering, 3 dominating victories. So you can find some things wrong, but to me, what I see and what I've talked to you about off the air, both of you guys, is I didn't think we were quite as good as everybody thought we were after the South Carolina game, but I thought our ceiling was very high, and I think our team can really be, when you add these freshmen that we're going to start playing better, and maybe some of the guys that are playing because of experience, our speed and talent level is going to be, Billboard #1 chart.
Well, and people will say, well, is Georgia really the number 2 team in the country? And I'm like, well, give me a list of teams that can beat them right now.
Yeah, that you'd feel confident.
Now
on a neutral field,
that's not a long list.
Now,
if you win a neutral field, you go Ohio State, Clemson,
Oklahoma, maybe.
I don't think Oklahoma's defense can stand up what I've seen so far, but those are teams that would be very competitive each way. But I like our shot against any
Absolutely.
of them.
That's what I'm saying. And so we kind of look at, again, it's just our nature to look for the chinks in the armor. What can you fix? Because you got those big games coming. It's like, what do we need to get taken care of before we head to Death Valley? What do we need to deal with before facing Drew Lock? What happens when Tennessee comes to town? Vandy can always play Georgia tough. So you're looking for those chinks. And I know we spend an inordinate amount of time on it, on this show, but that's part of.
That's good. That's good.
But we don't want to be caught off guard.
Sure.
You don't want to say everything is great. But to your point about the ceiling for this team.
I want to put one more thing in, and you say, but about the history part, about we've always had trouble with South Carolina. All this, all that stuff's out the window with this coach right here.
Very
now.
True.
Hey, he didn't like history in college because he talks about the now, about what's happening now. And so go ahead. So I think those things are not quite as prevalent as maybe, the old fans. Well, we've always had trouble, but who knows? But go ahead. What were we going to say?
I've been accused of being pessimistic, and I am. From the Larry Munson School of Pessimism, I've got it drilled down into my bones. But when I look at watching Roquan Smith last night, 7 solo tackles. Leonard Floyd and him combined for 10 stops, for the Bears last night. 2 pass breakups, a fumble recovery. They stopped the Seattle Seahawks on 20% of their plays, just the two of them together. And I look at all the guys that Georgia is missing right now, and, it makes you nervous. But then you look at all the 8 5-stars that came in. Some of them aren't even playing yet, or playing extensive snaps. And I started thinking about the middle linebackers. There's a group of 4 guys who are rotating like crazy. We put up the snap charts, the snap count at UGASports about an hour ago. So if you get a chance, go to UGASports.com, check out the snap count. It shows you who all plays. And then you look at the rotations on the defensive line, the rotation in the secondary. I mean, last year when Trent Smallwood was doing our snap counts, we'd have about 7 guys in the secondary. Now he's listing 14. He's listing 2, 3 inside linebackers. Now he's listing 4 or 5. Outside linebackers the same. Granted, some of those were blowouts. You're getting the second, third string in. But even against a team that was giving you some, trouble in the first half like South Carolina, the coach saying there's a ceiling there. Georgia's starting to feel really deep. And that even with the inexperience that you have, in the secondary, now you got J.R. Reed, fantastic. DeAndre Baker, that's great. But your 3 other guys are newish.
Yeah.
You got a true freshman starting, sophomore at the star position, and a sophomore at the other safety spot. Young guys.
Yeah.
Guys that could be picked on a little bit, the guys they'll go after. Guys who were at your inside linebacker spot who, the stars, if you will, in the recruiting world, they're freshmen. They're not in there yet. But your other guys are doing a fantastic job, leading the team in tackles.
Sure.
So, but it's just, in other words, it's starting to feel like that Alabama-esque. We've got so many guys coming with fresh legs who know what to do. They're playing fundamental football. Like you said, the ceiling for this team does feel higher than even last year. And
I think of it like this. As you were thinking of it, I was trying to come up with this in my head. Is there a position that you could necessarily come up with and say, man, if you plug in the second-string guy here, things are going to get significantly worse?
And that's been a problem at Georgia for years.
Agreed.
You were scared to death that one of your tackles would go down.
It could be at linebacker right now just because these guys are solid linebackers that know what to do and can make plays, but they're not overwhelming physical speed, talent, size, and all like a guy like Roquan. And a guy like him doesn't come along but I think that's the big issue. We are getting depth there, but we don't have the dominating player there that we had in Roquan, and that's hard to do. But I see that kind of talent coming along with Tyndall and Walker as far as their skill set and their potential, whether they can learn the defense quick enough. We'll see. And then you mentioned that about the safeties. I think our safety combo with LeCount and Reed is good as anybody as far as knowing what to do, making tackles in space, breaking on the ball, getting guys lined up. I mean, you cannot say enough about having a guy like Reed out there with all these fastball teams. It's hard enough to run your assignment, okay? Just pretend that you've got to say, okay, I've got this guy. If he releases inside, I'm going to take him. If he releases outside, I'm going to pass him on to this guy. If he blocks, I'm going to do this. I mean, that's 3 things that could have happened. But you only got about 5 or 10 seconds to think about that because they're coming out and running it at you. And if you're confused and not lined up right, then they're going to hurt you. J.R. Reed really is a very good guy to help our team from that standpoint. He's telling these guys, okay, they're in this, we're going to do this, we're going to check, we're going to do all. We don't miss many checks with those 2 guys back there. And then you had Tyreek coming in to help on the nickel and dime. Poole's done a good job, and Webb, those guys. But, I mean, we really have good players that are intelligent.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, they're good.
Well, you're not going to see the field if you're not smart because Mel Tucker's secondary is
we don't ever see
confusing.
this. I mean, we've got the podcast, but you don't ever see players doing this with our team. What's the call, Coach? What are we doing?
My God. I go back to Todd Grantham's defense.
I knew you were going to say Grantham.
Well, I mean, when the ball snapped, and I actually have a photo. I can go dig it out at the Florida game.
Nebraska.
And there's 4 heads staring at, and you can see it because I shot it wide. There are 4 heads staring at the sideline, and the ball has come off the ground.
Yeah, they're still waiting. They're still trying to figure it out. The ball is in play.
And I'm not going to call them out because, and here's the thing, Ramik Wilson, I believe, was one of the guys in there, and I think he was the one in charge of calling the play. And Ramik's looking over there like, what the hell, Coach?
Yeah.
And oh my God, I think Jordan Jenkins was over there too. I mean, he's
like that you just said, I'm not going to call them out, and then you were like, Rameek Wilson was in there.
No, I'm just saying, I'm not banging on them. It wasn't
You've
their
already
fault.
banged on Briscoe today. This is the bang of the week. Who else is going to get banged?
No, I was just saying.
Hey, bang me for
Jordan was looking.
He's going to get. Hey, Jim Donna didn't kick a field goal when Jasper Saints fumbled. Bang. Go ahead and bang me 5 interceptions.
Didn't pull a quarterback South Carolina.
Oh,
we got.
Lord.
Hey, but I just remember these. I was just trying to think of the guys that were looking sideways because the play hadn't been called in. Or they didn't understand what the play call was, and it wasn't their fault. They're looking over there, and I'm like, there's got to be a damn default.
That's
okay.
right.
It's like, if we're not sure what to run, either run what we did last play or go to this default because the quarterback's under center, taking the snap. And
it happens. We had a play against Chattanooga one time when Terrell Owens was playing wide receiver in the slot, and this kid from Beckley, West Virginia, forgot to cover him.
That's a good start.
It's hard enough to cover Terrell Owens, but when nobody's on him on visual coverage, he's going to make a lot of plays.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speaking of visuals, I'm sitting here pounding my beer.
What do you call it, honey blonde?
I'm still ahead, but
You on the honey blonde?
Are we going?
I mean, we can race.
Well, the great thing here is if we're champions, they'll give you another one if you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I like it.
But if you get a chance to swing by Academia Brewing Company out in West Athens, out by the mall, the brew pub has a bunch of stuff coming up. I want to tell you about it real quick. This Thursday night, they have live music from Joe Catt and his friend Dan Rourke. They're going to hit the stage from 7 to 9:30. They also have live music Friday from 8 to 10. So Thursday, 7 to 9:30, Friday, 8 to 10. And 8 to 10 is going to be the talented Celtic folk duo Clay Babies.
All right.
Clay Babies.
Get your Irish jig on.
Yeah. So now Saturday, it's the away game, and they're going to have their UGA alum viewing party out there. If you want to make a reservation, call 678-726-2288. That's 678-726-2288 by Friday. You can get to reserve your priority seating in the UGA Alumni Association area. You also get first dibs to purchase a Savage commemorative pint glass for $5.
There you go.
So you get the pint glass like
shoulder
this with
pads
Savage
not
on
included.
Yeah. And, of course, it's going to be open to anybody, so you don't have to be part of the UGA alumni to go out there and watch it, but you can get the reserved seating if you swing out there. Remember, Academia Brew Pub is the official viewing party of the UGA alumni group, so swing out there. And then next week, we'll tell you about it more, but if you get a chance to go out there on Tuesday, September 25th, a portion of all food and beverages proceeds will go to support the Classic City Roller Girls. You ever been to
Roller derby, man? Yeah, absolutely. You gotta love that.
So the Classic City Roller Girls will be out there next Tuesday. So get a chance, swing by. Yeah.
I always like when they sling the girl behind forward.
Slingshot
get
move.
behind
Absolutely. and Athens has its own roller derby team. They're the Classic City Roller Girls. Very interesting young ladies.
Where do they play? Where do they play? Where do they play?
At the Classic Center.
Classic Center.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And here's the thing: Academia Brewing Company is actually going to have a percentage night, where a percentage of all the food and beverages that you buy goes to fund the Classic City Roller Girls. So, again, big part of the community, the Academia Brewing Company, and big part of our show.
What was that Academia had out for their last deal about we have the meats? They're doing something new with that.
Man, they had a sandwich out there that was just like barbecue and bacon, and then they had it was like fries.
So I read their stuff. I read
meats.
it. We have the meats.
Yeah,
like the guy says it. We have the meats.
Yeah, they made Arby's look like chumps. It's like you think you have meats, and then they put out a couple plates. And go ahead and follow them on Twitter and Facebook. They put out a different picture each day. It's food porn.
It is. There's no doubt about it. Speaking of, we got the catfish right here in front of us that we're straight picking at.
And you notice that every time we have catfish, it always winds up down there by Coach Donnan.
Isn't that
I know it's good, but
just how that works out.
They had a question on Jeopardy last night about animals with two names, and one of the answers was catfish.
There you go.
You got the animals got two names, catfish.
All right, let's dive into some questions. I think.
What do you think of Alex Trebek's beard? Do you think it's not as good as yours?
But he's a legend, man.
He's 80 years old.
But maybe they'll call me. Maybe they'll call me to be the next one.
He's not hiding a scar like mine.
Mike Getchell wants to know, good question here for Coach. Mike. He says, is this the fastest defense that you have seen in your time paying attention and watching Georgia football?
I think it's potentially going to be pretty fast. I mean, especially if some of these other guys start playing that are faster than some of them starting. I think that's one of the things that Kirby has really worked hard on is playing fast, along with Coach Tucker. I really believe that our ability to swarm the ball and gang tackle is very prevalent. So I would say it's among the faster teams I've seen here.
I was also very impressed last year, and we've seen the same this year. Yards after catch is very minimal. Like you said, contesting those passes, okay, they might complete the pass, but those guys are being dropped. And of the many things I don't understand about football, and they are legion, is how to correctly coach open field tackling.
Yeah.
Because that is just a nightmare.
And it's getting harder and harder and harder.
I mean, telling the guy, you're going to face Demetrius Robertson on a two-way go out in the flat, you got to bring him down. You can teach him the fundamentals.
Now, you can't go high because you might get a targeting call.
Oh, and
you can't, you know what I'm saying?
The fact now you can't tackle like you used to tackle.
Yeah, you got to be.
Every tackle is apparently illegal now. But I was very impressed with the fact that of what we've seen so far. Again, these are not three world beater teams right now, but when they do complete passes, they're not breaking tackles and going deep. And Coach, this is just a layman's observation, but halfway through just about any Georgia game that I've covered over the last 25 years, I could almost tell you if Georgia's going to win or lose by how well they were tackling that day. And I go back to that Tennessee game where Georgia's up, and then all of a sudden Josh Dobbs is running over people. Josh Dobbs should not be able to run over people, but everybody was grabbing him around the chest. They put all these arm tackles up high, and everybody on that Tennessee team was just going into the end zone with no business. And I'm like, even I know you got to get a little bit lower than that. But what we're seeing from this Georgia team is fundamental, great open field tackling on those contested passes. The quarterback gets it, he throws it short, and they're getting out in the flat, but they're only getting 2-3 yards.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when we talk about competition that you guys get to hear Coach Smart in his press conference, he talks about, going against each other and good against good and all that. And we have phases of practice where, you're going against the scout team, but also phases where you're going against comparable talent that you're going to see in the SEC among the better teams. So if you would break it down to a practice scenario, let's just say the running backs are going to work on their pass pro, and they don't just work against the scout team. They'll work against linebackers and defensive ends, and they might not necessarily, make it too full speed, but it's technique, footwork, everything, getting your feet in position, and they're working on the rush lanes. The same thing with we do a drill every day that I don't go out there much anymore, but, preseason where, people throw bubble screens. Well, one of the hardest things to do is get off a block with a guy one-on-one and try to tackle a guy like Mecole Hardman or block a guy like Baker. So we do 5 or 6 minutes there. You can go online on YouTube and see Kirby speaking at a clinic and talking about that drill there helps their team as good as anything, blocking each other, getting off blocks, and then thudding up, going up and wrapping a guy up, not necessarily putting him on the ground. We'll do a drill where guys will get on the ground, put their back, their face up. They'll blow the whistle. They'll have to get up. That's like they've been knocked down. Now they'll have to get up and wrap a guy up. That symbolizes getting knocked down. So it's easy to make a tackle if you're in the open. Not easy, but it's a lot easier if you're already in position to. But if you're down and then you got to get up and make a tackle, but you simulate that by doing it, and it's like a 2-yard move there, so you don't hit each other. Then we'll put the ball on the 3-yard line and put his shoulder into the guy, into the defender, and the defender's braced, so you've already had the contact, and then you blow the whistle and then see if he's got enough power to run over him, and then if the other guy can stand him up and knock him back. Well, you're again taking the contact out of it, but you're finishing it. So we really do some breakdowns in practice that I think for the fans really help our guys tackle better, run better with power, like Holyfield running people over, Hardman missing guys in the open field. Those are things that you simulate. You just don't hope you rely on skill, to do it.
Our guy Chuck Ward chimes in. He says,
almost like he's a good coach.
Kirby calls that drill Millennial Oklahoma. That is true. That's
right,
he did.
Well, Chuck, you're right on top of that.
Steve Burnett here with a very good question. Very interesting considering, what we've seen so far from Georgia's
Millennial
offense.
Oklahoma.
He says last year UGA was 4 yards short of 700 yards against Missouri. Do you see that happening again?
Yes.
First half? Oh, no. Ouch. No, I don't. I was a bad statement there. No, I don't know. I don't think these games are as easy as the fans think.
No.
You expect to do it, but, you need some big plays. But if they're going to have to take some chances to stop us, there's no question about our speed and size is going to be. So we can break a lot of big plays on these guys if they take chance. If they play vanilla against us, we might not get as many yards, but that's where you see a lot of big plays. And when teams play man coverage, like we saw middle the other day, and then we saw good block at the point of attack between Cleveland and Wilson, and then Holyfield breaks it, long run, but the first guy he sees is the guy's tackling from behind. So I think we might see maybe a lot of points, but maybe not quite as many yards, because I think they'll make it some lost yardage plays on us, because they're thick up front now. They're thick, big. They don't have quite as many pro defensive linemen like they used to have. Back in the first, we're 6-1 against them, but the early games that we played against them, they had one or two guys every year getting drafted.
They had 4 guys get drafted off that defensive line.
So this year, I just pulled up the depth chart because I was thinking, who are the guys that kind of maybe concern you a little bit in that regard? I mean, looking down the list, really it's Terry Beckner Jr. I think the defensive tackle spot. He's probably the main guy that you've got to kind of build around and be worried about where he's going to be. But outside of that, just not a ton of star power there on that defensive side of the ball.
Well, here's another thing in Missouri's defense a little bit. Last week against Purdue, they lost their best corner like in the first 2 minutes of the game. So you just take Baker out of our defense the first 2 minutes. I don't care who you put in there; it's different.
Yep.
And there's a decided difference in their depth and ours, so that hurt them. And but I can't take up for them too much, though, because the starting quarterback for Purdue didn't even play, and this guy didn't even know he was going to play, and he threw for 590 yards. Yeah. So
I'm just thinking, when you have those little dump down passes to Miko Hardman, Demetrius Robertson, Tyler Simmons.
Demetrius Robertson, does he play wide receiver?
He does.
How many passes he caught this year?
Has he caught one yet?
I don't know. That was a
I know he hasn't. That was a rhetorical.
No, I was trying to remember.
That's why I said, does he play wide receiver?
I was trying to remember.
He's a running back.
That's
well,
pretty.
That's fine. I'd let him do it again.
That's hard to believe, though.
And James claimed
if I'd have told you that, if I'd have told you that D-Rob wouldn't have caught a pass in the first 3 games 3 weeks ago, what would you say?
Oh, you'd never believe that.
I'd think you were drunk.
Okay.
I'm like, how is he just sipping on your beer over there? I thought you were drunk. And it's funny though. Also, if you
glass
told
of
me
water and a hammer.
If you told me Jason Stanley wouldn't catch his first touchdown until he was a senior, I'd have also thought you were full.
Glad to see him get that one.
Absolutely.
I was also glad to see Tyler Simmons get his first touchdown.
Jeremiah Holloman, shout out.
Miko Hardman gets his first one on a return.
Somebody asked, how happy were you to see Miko finally break a punt return?
Well, he predicted that. Didn't you 3-2-1 that he would break one? How many did you say he's going to break?
I predicted that Georgia would get like 3 special teams return, and not just Miko, but because Akil Crumpet can get back there and return one.
I would say 3 by the first 7 games.
Okay, he's going to up it, but yeah, I was thinking 3. But I knew that. And the reason I keep asking Miko about that each time we got to interview him is because it's just fun to watch his reaction. And he would give me this look like, man, I was so bloody close, and he'd put his fingers, and it would be a shoestring tackle or just somebody would bump him and he'd barely step out of bounds. He was so many times last year close to returning one. And when he finally got one, there was nobody more excited in the stadium than me, just because I'm happy for him to get it. But again, I was also happy for Jason Stanley. Here's a guy who a lot of people have overlooked. He finally gets his touchdown catch. This is a guy with 13, 14, 15 starts.
Yeah, and we talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it after the game too. Stanley was a guy who you were like, how does he fit in with this receiving core? Is he ever going to end up making the impact? He has worked his way onto the field in the way that Kirby Smart wants to set the standard. And they're talking a lot about the standard. It's through blocking. It's through his special teams plays. He's earned himself those opportunities, and that's what allowed him to.
Well, I remember last year telling people in one of our 3-2-1 articles that the starting wide receivers for Georgia were going to be Michael Chigbu and Jason Stanley, and people told me I was drunk. I'm like, they're like,
They're right. You probably were drunk.
And they're like, he didn't catch a pass last year. He only had 2 as a freshman. What are you thinking? I'm like, trust me. And sure enough, who did we see start? Michael Chigbu, Jason Stanley, and Georgia just pounded the ball. And I go back to guys like Michael Bennett, who would come off the field just covered in dirt with 1 pass reception. Or the tight ends, we're like, why isn't Georgia throwing to the tight ends? And they come out covered in blood, grass, dirt, spittle, sweat. And those guys have worked their butts off the entire game. Yeah, the running backs together went for 243 yards, but that wouldn't have happened without the tight ends and the wide receivers blocking downfield. So it's great to see a guy who puts in all that sweat equity finally get the touchdown pass go his way.
Well, and it's indicative, too, I think, of Kirby Smart. He's telling the truth. I mean, and I think that resonates with recruits. He's telling the truth. If you want to play, here's what you got to do. And if you do these things, you're going to get your shots. You're going to get your opportunities. Tyler Simmons has proven it. Jeremiah Holloman's proven it. Jason Stanley's proven it. These guys have worked their way onto the field through exceptional play in the areas where you might not necessarily think of as the glamour spots. Yeah. But that's how they want to do it, and that's how they want to set the tone.
Let me get back to this point right here. We're talking about our team right now. Let's go back to September 1st was our first game. Let's go back to August 31st, and I'm going to be Karnak the Magnificent. I'm going to ask you 4 things here. How many times do you think Justin Fields will run the zone read? How many passes do you think D-Rob will catch? How many yards do you think Swift will have, and how many passes do you think Terry Godwin will catch? Every one of those have not. None of that's happened, and we're 3-0.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, man! Hey, wait till you see Terry Godwin out there. Wait till you see when we finally do let.
That's why I said 700 yards in the first half.
He's never run the ball once yet on a run, unless he runs the ball on a pass, which is protecting him. That's great. And we haven't thrown the ball to D-Rob. That shows you how good these other receivers are in front of him. And then you had the fact that Swift, who's a guy that was the 3rd best back last year, no question about it. That's why he came in before these other guys. Hadn't even hardly played. Yep. So come on, man. Come on, man.
Dante Edie with a really good question here. He says, Coach, if you're going against Missouri, how are you going to go about attacking these guys?
I'm licking my lips, man.
I would throw it 1,000,000 times.
No, I wouldn't do that. I just think that.
Hey, why didn't Kirby answer that question yesterday?
Because you're not going to give that stuff out.
I'm sorry, I just love that question. Are you going to throw it more this week, Coach?
That's like hell? It's like you ask General Patton, are you going in with tanks? Or are you going in with, what are you doing there?
I don't know busting the guy that asked it. I don't even remember who
General
did, but
MacArthur.
It just cracked me up.
I shall return.
Yeah. But he's like, maybe I shouldn't tell you guys this. And I'm like, do we really just ask him if he's going to throw the ball more against Missouri?
Yeah. No, I think the biggest thing with Jim Chaney that I've been impressed with when he was at Arkansas, when he's at Tennessee, when he's at Purdue, this is kind of old cliche, but take what the defense gives you, but also set things up. We set things up against OU in the championship game by, throwing the ball short and getting them out of an 8-man front and then running the ball second half. We pounded South Carolina, and so we set them up to really get after them in the second half. I think we'll see a lot of open field plays. If they would decide to play us man coverage and box it up, I think we'll have a lot of big plays. If they play us too deep and all that, we'll pound right at them. But we got variation type stuff we can do. But if I were calling the game against Missouri, one thing that I would do is give them some misdirection, because they don't change. They're not real quick. They're big, but they're physical. I would do some misdirection. I would do some I would go deep on these corners. They proved they couldn't, and then I would wear them out underneath, because I think their linebackers are going to play the run so much that we can wear them out. But that's just looking at what I saw against Purdue. But there's a lady over there at the rest home that I played bingo with that told me that she'd be doing that too.
Chuck Ward, good question here from Chuck. He says, and this is something that a lot of people have asked or talked about this week. The Swift, the Swift injury, not injury. He was out of the game after pretty much the first quarter. You never saw him come back in. Kirby Smart said yesterday everybody's going to be back. We were expecting 100% health. But Chuck, with a good question here, he says, look, if Swift isn't full speed, do you think you sit him out during this game? Do you let him hang back and save him for later in the season, or do you think you need him to take this victory?
One of the things that, we had James Wilder when I was at Missouri, had a pulled hamstring early, and you just never know. I came in the next year, and he missed the whole season, the season before I got there, because he just couldn't get his hamstring right. And with the groin, it's the same thing. You know how people, when your leg hurts, it's hard enough just to walk, but that's just an area that's very hard to plant, and I don't know the extent of that because I'm not privy to it, but they certainly felt like that game was under control last week. He probably could have played a lot more. So we'll see how, just like a coach would say, how he practices this week, how he looks. And, that's a good point. If he's not 100%, it's hard to play a guy that's not 100% as a back.
And I don't see the necessity of it either. Well, I think that Elijah Holyfield, Brian Harrion, and James Cook, I feel confident about that three being able to go out and do what you need to against this Missouri team.
True. That's true. And I want to add this, too. I think deep down, we're probably going to look, if we continue to have a situation with Zamir out like he is, and with three, and somebody else gets hurt as back, we can look at some of these other guys to maybe play running back that in certain situations, because they got that kind of skill. You see these guys running on the edge like Tyler Simmons and Karis Jackson, whoever it might be.
They lined Karis Jackson up in the backfield last week.
You can do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can. Well, you're an astute analogy, man.
Oh no, I just looked back there and I'm like, I know his mama wanted a picture, so I took one.
Did you have a photo of him?
I may have in our photo gallery.
I mean, that's really impressive that you could pick that out.
Yeah, well, there's not too many number 10s back there.
But I mean, seriously though, that's another good coaching point, building depth. If we got a lot of good receivers, so maybe that's an area where we got because you never know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, if it goes from 3 to 2, which could happen, then then who you got? So,
well, to answer the question, I look at it this way, and I guess I'll answer with another question. Does DeAndre Swift give you something head and shoulders above what the other guys do? Is he that much better than James Cook? Is he that much better than,
in my opinion, in one facet?
You see my criteria?
Absolutely.
If he's, in other words, an 80% DeAndre Swift, is he better than 100% Holyfield, 100% Brian Harrion, 100% James Cook? Now I know we can catch it.
That's the one. That's the one area.
You just don't know. 80% is one thing, but if that 80% entails not getting any better with your leg, you got to get to a point
with the possibility of making it worse.
So that's what I'm saying. Worse. But I think you make a good point about these other guys. They certainly bring a lot to the table, and I think Holyfield deserves every opportunity he can get. But this guy Swift's a special guy from the standpoint of change direction, power, ball skills, all that. And, I think Holyfield's a more straight-ahead guy, and he's really powerful. And Cook,
can you get that with Brian Harrion, though?
Well, Harrion is a good, solid player, too.
But he it doesn't seem to have the power that Swift does.
And it's like anything. You can break it down. Different guys have different skill levels, and absolutely. I think we're fortunate that Harrion's got the experience that he does that can come in there in a big game. Because the other thing you got to look at is if you lessen your running game, then when you do go the passing game, you got to have a guy that's smart enough to cover the protections to help you. Yeah. You know what I mean? A guy that can
pick up. You're nervous about having James Cook back there.
Well, James knows what to do, but he's just not real big.
I'm not saying he didn't know where to be. It's just he's not a big guy.
It's hard to take on 250-pound defensive end. But that's another reason why Chaney's a coordinator. They can move their protections around. They can sprint out. They can do all these other things. So it's a problem. All of us that started with Zamir getting hurt. Well, and then all of a sudden you lose this other guy. I don't know how much we've lost him. I really don't. I wish I could say definitively what's wrong with him, But I'm not going to go over there and say, hey, Kirby, I'm your old coach. How about you can tell me,
Give me an insight so I can tell everybody on the podcast.
And like I said, I appreciated the way Chuck phrased the question because he's not saying, Kirby's playing games with it. I mean, he said, and you got to take the guy at his word. He said we're expecting to be 100% this weekend at the running back position. That means DeAndre Swift should be a part of this. Right. But if he's not, how much?
Well, if he's not, then everybody's going to turn around and say, Kirby, you told us you'd be 100%.
No, he didn't.
And Kirby's not going to. That's not fair. To I'm not saying it would be fair to hold his feet to the fire, but Kirby's not going to put himself into a situation where he's having to defend what he said earlier in the week. So he's not going to come out and say it would. If there were major issues, he said, it's something we're going to monitor.
Yeah, here's the thing about college ball compared to pro. Pro, you got to give out a definitive injury list, exactly what's wrong. College, you can be very much up in the air. There's no need to tell the defense out there at Missouri that so-and-so not. He did say that very candidly that Andrew wasn't going to practice yesterday. They're going to bring him out there today, see what he can do, and bring him along. And I thought that was very vivid that he would say that. So I think
same with Godwin.
You can't be right from the press standpoint and please everybody and tell them exactly. But I think it's from my standpoint. I don't want to tell the other team dog manure about my team. I don't want to tell them. I don't want to tell them when we're getting there. I don't want to tell them what time we're going to warm up. I don't want to tell them what color jerseys we're going to wear. I mean, I don't want to. Hey, that's their job. They take care of their team. We take care of our.
And how long do you think it will be before, with the new all these states allowing for gambling now, and
might be something's coming out on that.
Eventually,
injury.
You might actually see a uniform injury reporting list.
Yeah, I mean, we get legalized gambling in this state. We'll start giving you some tips on this thing that you have got to pay more than 27 cents a day. We'll give you some good tips.
Yeah. We'll have the Jim Donna and lock of the week.
Speaking
I've
of good
had
tips.
two of those the last 2 weeks on that for those guys. Well, 2 weeks ago I had Boise State against UConn, and then last week I had Alabama against Ole Miss. For the condo pick of the week. Bet your condo on it.
Who covers this week with Georgia at a 15.5 favorite?
I can't say that on Georgia. I wouldn't know.
Come on, Coach. I got a car payment to make. Speaking of car payments.
Hey, talk about the cars.
Speaking of car payments, big shout out to Athens Ford. We get a chance, swing by Athens Ford. They're out there across from the Sonic and Sam's Club, if you will, out on Atlanta Highway. Just real quick, some of the deals they have in September. We're still in September. These are good through September 30th. If you want a Ford Focus, you can get one for $13,999, under $14,000, or you can get 0% financing, APR.
That's a brand new car.
Brand new car for 60 months. 5 years? 5 years? Do the math for me.
That's right. I'm correct. You are correct.
Journalism graduate. Didn't have to take a math. So 5 years of payments for 0% financing or you can get the car for $13,999, a brand new vehicle for under $14,000. Come on. If you want something a little bit bigger, get the Ford EcoSport. You can get it for $18,999. Again, you also have the option of getting it for $18,999 or 0.9% APR financing for 60 months. Again, this is all for qualified buyers. Don't go in there with my credit rating. You don't get the 0 or 0.9%. You need credit like Jake's. Now, there were 3 cars I looked at when I went out there to get my Explorer. I settled on the Explorer because, I looked at the F-150. I was also checking out the Ford Escape because it had a lot of room in it. You can get a 2018 Ford Escape for $19,995. Again, a mid-size SUV, ton of room in it, great gas mileage.
Brand spanking new. You're the first person.
You're the first person to own it for under $20,000 or 0% APR for 60 months for qualified buyers. So you get these nice little either options, So, again, $20,000 for a brand new Ford Escape. I wound up getting the Explorer because I have a fat staff with a lot of gear.
Are you guys driving?
The staff's fat? Is that what we're going to go with?
Dude, are y'all driving to LSU? Are you driving that down there or flying?
Absolutely. Yeah,
what does that take, 2 days and 14 nights?
That feels like it.
Well, it depends on where you stop on the way down. So we got a few stops to make.
Well, what about this week? Are you flying or driving?
We're flying out there. We're flying out to Missouri.
Are you going to Kansas City or St. Louis?
Kansas City.
Going to
meet us at
Kansas City.
Meet us at Q39 on Friday.
Yep.
You got some pretty little women there, and I'm gonna give you one. I might take a train.
I might take a plane.
But if I had to walk,
I'm going just the same.
Going to
Kansas City. Come on, you don't know this old song. That's why we don't leave Jake on the show.
Yeah, sorry.
You hadn't heard Kansas City before?
I got to take you guys back to the home when
Wilson
we're done.
Pickett. Wilson Pickett, man.
And we got also real quick the Ford Explorer that I got. You can get it for $9,000 off or 0% financing.
Wow.
Or if you want the Ford F-150, you can get it for $14,000 off.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, and again, the reason I didn't get the Ford F-150, that XLT crew cab, it would have fit in all of us, but there's no way my wife, who's a very petite woman, could drive it.
Yeah.
So I wound up getting the Ford Explorer, and again, you can ask the guys who went with me to South Carolina the other week. We had 4 people in it, 3 rows of seating, huge trunk, great gas mileage.
It was aces.
All the bells and whistles, and I got mine. It was certified pre-owned. They go through a 172-point inspection out there. They check it top to bottom. New tires, new everything on it, and everything you get from Athens Ford has a lifetime powertrain warranty on it. Even their pre-owned vehicles under 80,000 miles. So. You get a chance, we got to Athens Ford.
All right. We got a couple of recruiting questions here. A couple of people hopped in on that. Kamel Oz asking about some uncommitted guys for 2020 defensive linemen. One of the names he mentioned is Warren Brinson, and he said, how likely do you think that guy is to commit to Georgia? I feel very good about Georgia's chances there. That's a guy who comes from the same program as Nolan Smith. In high school, and then moved to IMG now. So he's got the double. He's following the whole path of the guy. So I think that Warren Brinson definitely a guy to watch for in the 2020 class. Big kid. Going to continue to see his stock boost. Andrew Caraway wants to know about Andy Boykin and Tank Bigsby. We definitely got some stuff coming on those guys. Got a chance to watch both of them play last Friday night in LaGrange.
What do you think?
Very, very impressed. Tank Bigsby, I think, is I'm wildly impressed with him. I think that he's a guy who can play anywhere on the field. He's a tremendous running back. Great size, can take a beating. I mean, this is a kid who they call him Tank for a reason, and it shows.
I honestly was going to ask you, Tank. Why do they call him Tank?
Because he can take a beating. I mean, they could call him Timex because he can take a licking and keep on taking.
Did you talk to Gus at the game?
I didn't talk to Gus. I saw Gus there though. I did see him. He was out watching Tank and also Andy Boykin. We'll be talking about those guys over at UGASports.com here in the coming days. So make sure to get those updates over there.
Yeah, tell us. What are you hearing from all your coaching buddies when they see Ed Orgeron beat?
Losing that they had that good lead 2 years in a row, but Coach Orgeron, I mean, he called me up after the game. I told you that, Coach Donnan, I told you we were going to whip their butt. We came in there and we showed them who the real Tigers are, and all I can say is, go Tigers.
Honestly, God, every time I hear Coach Orgeron speak on TV, I honestly think it's somebody doing an imitation of Coach Orgeron on TV.
No doubt.
I mean, it's just...
Tell them about it, JoJo. Get that Hummer. I got a Hummer. You got a Hummer? Come on, let's get it going.
Every time I expect him to stop talking halfway through, go, Brent Schaefer. But, I mean, are you
I'm going to give the guy credit now. He since that Troy game last year, he's turned that place around. They got a good sense of direction. Steve Ensminger doing a good job. That Burrow kid's solid. They played that whole game and only brought 4 the whole game. They played it with a 4-man rush and just bend and don't break, and they tackle well in space. And the other thing before we get off the show today that we've been talking about Missouri, I'm going to give Odom a little credit. Do you realize since the last year when they played us, they've played 10 games and they've won 9 of them?
Really?
Yeah.
The only game they lost was to Texas in the bowl game when their offensive coordinator Josh Heupel left to go to UCF, and they a little discombobulated in the game. Really didn't have a real good feel for their offense against Texas. But I mean, they've played some lesser teams, no question about it.
Yeah.
Beat Arkansas and Tennessee and some of these teams, and then Purdue. We thought Purdue was going to be something to be reckoned with, but you look at the whole Big Ten West last week. Just Northwestern went down, Wisconsin went down, Purdue went down. I mean, Nebraska went down. I mean,
I was going to make fun of them until I remembered what happened to Arkansas. So.
They're going to have a home and home this week, so one team can win. The Pac-10 South and the Big Ten West are going to play, and somebody will win.
Willie Taggart calling up like, "Hey, let me in too."
Yeah, Willie coming in there. Let me in. Woo, woo, woo,
Y'all let me play.
We need the coach to have a segment each week called the hottest seat of the week.
Speaking of
electric chair, Willie Taggart's in the electric chair right now.
Speaking of
Man,
coach's
I
segment.
got off to a bad start against Southern Miss, but I rectified it there against Texas Tech. But man, oh man.
Speaking of coach's segment, the yet to be sponsored, but you can be the sponsor if you're interested. Mouthwatering player
I did
of the week.
a bad job last week. I picked Swift, and I didn't realize that he was going to go down. But are they pulling him out?
To
but
pick it.
It's hard to pick. But as far as the player of the game this week, I hadn't even thought about it. Give me 10 seconds.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I want to tell you a superstitious thing I did on Saturday. We were watching warm-ups. I actually had my phone out and I started to tweet, and I said I was going to tweet, watch Elijah Holyfield tear one off today. He's going to have a big day today. And I was about to hit send, and I thought, if I tweet this, he'll tear an ACL or just something bad will happen. And I got superstitious. And I'm not a superstitious person by nature, but I'm like, this will blow up in my face if I tweet this out.
I can see that.
So I deleted it. I'm like, damn it, I should have left that in
You were
there.
going to put that on the tweet?
I was going to put that in a tweet because just the way they came out, I'm like, I just had a feeling. You could just see in the way he was warming up. I'm like, Elijah Holyfield's going to ruin somebody's day today.
Who's your player of the week this week, do you think?
This week, I'm going to go – it's going to be somebody on defense because I think the offense – I expect the offense to do well. So that's fish in a barrel there, Pick your poison. Yeah, Dane Young did a great job breaking down how Georgia has these explosive players. If you get a chance, check out that.
I want everybody to understand that I know the names of these guys, okay? But this is who's going to be the player of the game for us. Jake Fields. Justin Fromm.
Yeah, I like it.
Those two guys have big games this week.
DeAndre Walker. I think they're going to do some stuff to free him up at his speed to get to Drew Lock and make – I don't know that he gets a sack, but I imagine he gets a few quarterback hurries, blows up some of their game plans. I think that they do some things to free him up and bring him in. I'm
going to say Tyson Campbell. I think that we mentioned him earlier. Yeah. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities. I think he's going to get challenged a lot.
Because you're definitely not going to go against Baker.
Exactly. And so I think this will be a chance for a coming out party.
But honestly, though, it's funny. Let's go back to that South Carolina game where they went right at Baker with Deebo Samuel and said, we're going to set the tone right off the bat. And, of course, that burned them. Drew Lock's not going to back down from throwing against Baker.
No doubt.
But, Barry Odom would be like, why? Why would we do that? Let's go the other way.
Please stop doing that.
I do have a question for you, Coach.
I think a good quarterback, though, they don't worry so much about the matchup as much as they worry about protection. I think that's the big – in the back of this kid's mind is, hey, I sure hope I don't get pulverized by these guys.
We've had Coach do segments each week where he explains something about, the game to people like me who don't understand as well as we should. Kirby said something the other day that I thought was interesting. He was talking about basically why don't you set DeAndre Baker up against their number one wide receiver, and he says it's not that easy. But to a layman, it's like if you have Deebo Samuel on the field, wherever he's at, why don't you
just shadow him?
Yeah, that's your guy.
Okay,
and then Kirby's like, well, there's sides of where we're at on the field, how much room we have, left, right. So can you kind of explain to the layman, for people that are not bright like myself, why you can't have your best cornerback man up on their best wide receiver like a Deebo Samuel every play?
It's not like basketball where you're playing man-to-man and you just come out of the huddle and wherever 14 goes, you go with him. If you got man coverage, you can do that. But if you've got zone or you've got an extra defensive back in the game that you want to maybe cover for him in the nickel, you want him to be on the same side of that guy so you don't have two of your weaker guys on side by side, all that stuff. So you got to use your strength too and not take away from your strength and trying to defend somebody else's strength. So, and that plus the fact teams go fast to come out of the huddle. So if you're on one side of the field and you got to get to the other side of the field, then that might mess up the whole defense where you got to flip-flop everybody. So when they're going fast, it's hard to do that. If they're going lesser tempo and you can maybe call your coverages based on the formation they're in, then you can match up with him. So there'll be some matchups where he goes against him, but I hope that answers it for
No,
you.
it did. It just, I mean, I knew the zone versus man, and the stuff that Georgia's trying to do, but it just, the way Kirby said it, he went through it so fast. I'm like, a lot of people didn't catch this,
But I think the biggest thing is understanding that some of our calls are based on what we can do and what we can't do. Right. So we got to cover up for some things maybe.
Yeah.
We don't have to cover up for much, but, when you got somebody go down, then you got to be careful about, hey, I know that this other team's going to start picking on this guy. Just like the other day, I saw the Jaguars playing a defense where they took their free safety and doubled the inside receiver and let their defensive linebacker cover the deep middle. How many times you ever seen that before? Or last night you saw the Seattle drop kick a kickoff. I've never seen that.
That blew my mind. I couldn't believe that.
I hadn't dropped kicks since I'm in the backyard on 9 Linden Avenue where I used to do that when I was 10 years old.
But nothing beats what that kid at North Texas did with the
that was a good fake
punt. That was
good for him.
Speaking of, things that you can take at face value, quick shout out to Aaron Overhead Doors. We mention them all the time. If you get a chance, swing by Aaron Overhead Doors. Use them to replace your garage door, fix your garage door, put in a new one if you're building a house. And if you actually see the guys from there, tell them thanks for supporting the show. Real quick, they have 5-star ratings on Yelp, 5-star ratings on Google, 5-star ratings from the Better Business Bureau.
Give them a 5-star from Rivals.
They do. They're the best of Gwinnett 2016, best of Gwinnett 2017. I'm sure they'll probably best of Gwinnett for 2018. They have the Gwinnett Chamber Pinnacle Award. In other words, Aaron Overhead Doors, AARON. I'm not saying Argon or anything like that. I know my pronunciation's bad, but you can see the sign, AARON, Overhead Doors. Big sponsors of the website, big sponsors of the show, big sponsors of the podcast. So if you get a chance, use Aaron Overhead Doors. And these are huge Georgia fans. I swung by there a couple weeks ago. There's probably nobody more excited about watching this game at this weekend coming up than the guys at Aaron Overhead Door. They will be, of course, hopefully they'll be off on Saturday. But if you need them on Saturday, they'll come out. Need them on Sunday, they'll come out.
That's right.
And they actually have employees, not independent contractors that they just give them they're not just a clearinghouse for service calls, so they actually have people. They train them all the time. They do a lot of good charity work. And if you're not going to Missouri, you're not going to Q39 like Jake and I are, best barbecue probably ever had, get a chance, swing by Europe High, 58 different locations. You know what time the game is. It's an early game. Get there. They will have. It only takes 6-7 minutes to get your pizza. You can actually order ahead, swing by and pick it up. You got enough time during halftime to run to one.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
I mean, they are lightning fast. Everyone thinks, well, and I don't want to throw a competitor under the thing, but Mellow Mushroom, if you go there, it takes forever to get your food.
Wow.
Negative recruiting.
Wow, banging on Mellow Mushroom.
Let me ask you this on this Kansas City trip. How many meals can you eat there?
Well, the record I think is 4. We're going to go for 7.
Yeah.
Friday night.
I think you need to
Saturday night.
You need to go to Jess and Jim's Steakhouse.
Okay. All right.
Jess and Jim's. That's where the Chiefs hang out.
All right.
They got a porterhouse steak to make a Bulldog biggest chain.
Well, actually, we're thinking of going up there with a cooler, one of the small carry-on coolers, and just walk into Q39 and just ask them to fill it up with burnt ends.
I'm going to sit down. I'm going to eat dinner on Friday, and then I'm going to keep sitting there until I get hungry again, and I'm going to eat dinner again.
Well, you go home now. You've been here for an hour.
After the game in Missouri, you need to go by Booch's Bar, get a couple of those small burgers, take them on drive back to Kansas City.
Perfect.
Then go up to, where's that?
Booch's, Booches.
All right. So you know what you're doing. Instead of posting the post-game videos, you go to Booch's. I'll post the videos.
That works for me.
You meet me back at the car.
Booch's is worth it, man.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying
and there's another place called
plan it out.
Harpo's is good, too.
All right. Excellent. Well, we've gotten really into bonus time this week, so
that's all right.
We're running in overtime. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this week. Make sure you stop by, check out all of our sponsors, our guys here at Champy's Chicken. We're about to tear into this catfish. 11 Alive Sports, thank you for letting us be on your page. Screw everything up there. Your Pie, Academia for great beer. Make sure you call them about getting out and watching the game on Saturday. Athens Ford,
Cable East.
Aaron Overhead Doors, Cable East, 365 game day.
You the man.
And I think that's about it. And so we'll talk to you guys next week on the comeback from Columbia.
That's it for this episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast. Tune in next week for more Georgia Bulldogs news and notes from Athens.